tuples in Python. And so far, we have looked at the concept of tuple creation. We have also looked at tuple assignment. We're about going to the concept of trying to display, comparing tuples and functions, how we can actually make things work for us. And we say that function as a whole return a single value, return a single kind of value. But when it comes to tuple, we said that there is a way we can actually make it happen for us to return more than one value. So we're going to see that in the next few seconds. So let's just I'll be sharing my screen as well. So I'll be sharing my screen and let's go to tuple and let's get started. So you can see here I've loaded my Anaconda, I've opened my Anaconda here, and you can see I've launched my Jupyter notebook directly from here. And this is a particular notebook that we're using for the class tonight. And I can decide to say view, I can go to presentation mode. Let's see the different, okay, it's better off. So I think in the last class we looked at, please, if you're joining, mute yourself. So excuse me. So we look at I'm going to where we stopped at some point. So we said tuples are immutable, tuple comparison. We looked at the tuple comparison as well. We saw what happened here when it comes to tuple comparison. And we now said the tuple assignment, which we did A equals to 99, B equals to 1. We did a temporary variable with we swapped it and it gave us this, and we did it the more Pythonic way, and just a simple line of code by A, comma B. And we said the concept of unpacking when we try to assign each of them to go and unpack each other ones. And we also looked at when you assign variables, and by the time you assign, you gave it more values for it to unpack. It will tell you, my friend, please, you have too many values for me to unpack. It's not expected, and I expected just two because we are just two of us as the variable. So we looked at different examples. We looked at a practical example of a live scenario of an email. So by the time we looked at that email, we had to split. And when we split, we're going to put it in, it's going to come in form of a list. And we said, okay, let's assign this particular, what they call this particular list to value, to variable, sorry. So we did look at it, build a username and domain. And we created it to the email itself. And this split makes it what we are splitting. Where are we splitting? We're splitting at the point which we have the @ symbol. That's why, and by the time we split, it's going to return a list. And by the time we do that, the unpacking starts immediately here. So you can see the unpacking starts. The username goes for the John Doe that has been splitted by this method. And the domain goes for this example.com for the domain. And by the time we do that, we call it out. You can see it here and the rest. We did all this, and it was wonderful as well. So this is where we were supposed to start tonight. And tuples and functions. So you may notice that function can only return one value, which is always what we always see. And question is, what will you do if we want the function to return multiple values? The answer is tuple, and we're going to see it tonight. And look at what I think I told you guys to go back and check something. And I remember there was this particular quote when I was at the workplace today. It was like, there are two types of programmers. The first one uses Google, and the second one is a liar, that he doesn't use Google. So if you fall into those categories, please let us know that you don't use Google. If you don't use Google, you're a liar, because you cannot be a successful developer without having this googling kind of skill. So if you had gone through your work, please let us know. If you've gone through the process of tuples and functions, what did you find out? What did you find out? Anybody that went through? Maybe you went through it. Okay, Mr. Fonso, your hand is still raised. I don't know if it's still for this particular stuff that you did for functions. And Mr. Fonso, your hand is raised. Is it okay?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So if you have gone through the concept of functions and tuples, if you have read about it, if you have googled some things about it, let me know. Okay, all right, okay. So nobody. So it's always good that we go back and let's see what we can do. And thank God for this kind of course. We do practicals and we do projects. If there were no projects to be submitted, I'm very sure that we'll still have up to like 20 something plus people. I think it was the hands-on practical that scared people away when they could not meet up the target of all those things. It's very important. That's one of the things for this course. If you don't do it, you're wasting your time and it's not going to sink in. That's the only issue. And also, as you finish, even when we finish this course, there will be another cohort. But nevertheless, do not keep practicing. If you leave coding even for 1 week, it might look as if you have never coded before in your life. So always make it a constant stuff to always learn daily. Okay, so let's go there and let's see how we can make it happen. Tuples and functions. You may notice that, okay, I did that already. So as an example, there's a particular function that we're going to do to take, it's going to take two parameters and it's always like, it's called the div mode. And it takes two parameters, that's a dividend and a divisor, and it returns a tuple of two results, the quotient and the what? The remainder. You can see here, this is an inbuilt keyword and inbuilt function in Python. That's why it's changing. The color is changed. That's why the color is changed, and it's another one entirely. So results, if you want to do this, you can just put it in a variable. At some point, some person will just say, why don't you just run it out? I just want it to be like be defined very well. So result is equals to div mode. That's the dividend, okay, that is the 23, and the divisor, which is the 4. By the time we're done, it's going to return the quotient and the what, the remainder. So if 4 divides 23, is going to, I'm very sure that it's going to be 5, and that will be 5 times 20, that will be 20, that is 5, and it will remain 3. So you can see that the result, by the time we want to call out the result, is going to give us the quotient and also the remainder. You can see 5 equal, comma 3, and it returns a tuple. It returns a tuple. Why is it a tuple? Because it's in the normal bracket, as we say. So let's create a separate variables, quotient and remainder, so you can see how can we make it happen. We call that the name of we will define another variable and say, okay, quotient is equals to result. Where is the position? What is the position of the index position of the quotient? It is the very first element, which is the index of 0. So we call it out and said, okay, now whatever we have, let's print the quotient out. This quotient that is in a quote here is more like a string, trying to like define this quotient itself. Okay, so by the time we call out the quotient, it's going to print as well. We also do the same thing for remainder. We looked at it, we call out the name results, we put it the index, and we print out the two of them. We can see if we print it out, the output will be quotient is 5, remainder is 5. So you can also see tuple assignment. You could have just done it straight up, no waste of all this thing that we are doing. We don't want to waste much time. You could have just done quotient, comma, remainder equals to, this thing could actually take anything, but we just want it to be descriptive enough. The unpacking itself is going on right now. So by the time we call out the function of the div mode, is going to give us exactly what we need, and we print it out, and it gives us the very same thing that we went through all these lines to do. Okay, so that's how it's been done for that particular div mode. So now let's look at a practical example here. So let's define a function with unknown parameters. Guys, remember when I said something about unknown parameters? Then we call it args, and we always represent it with this asterisk args. And there's another one that I've not really explained much, and that's the keyword argument, which is like more of like what we have done in the other ones. Like anytime we give a keyword, all those parameters that we know, but this one we don't know the parameters. It could be anything. It could be, we could want it to perform so many things. Maybe we want to add a series of numbers and we don't know exactly the number of values we want to use. That's when the unknown parameters comes in, which we saw during our lectures series in functions. Okay, so the function will return the summation and the multiplication result of these parameters. So I believe what we want to do right now is to make sure that it brings out summation and also multiplication of this particular result. So we define a function right now, and by the time we define that function, we are naming it sum and multiply. The name of the function, we want to remember it to be descriptive enough, and we pass in an unknown argument, which is the parameter. There's the args, and by the time we print the args itself, anything that we pass into the args, we want it to be printed out, and we also want it to tell us the type of which it is. So by the time we do that and we call out the function, we put in the values in which we want to use that. These are the args itself, the unknown parameters. We just put them up, and you can see if we print it out, the function was to do what? To print out the args itself, and also to tell us the type of data structure or data type it is. So it gave us exactly, so the class is tuple. Okay, you can see here the class returns tuple for us. Now let's define this, and let's see the summary. Let's make it wonderful enough for us. So we do the same thing, but now we want to do the summation and also the multiplication as well. Okay, so we define a variable summation equals to, we call out the method for sum, for addition. We call it the sum, and what are we adding is the argument itself, the unknown argument that we want to, which is the args, and we also want to multiply. So very soon, how do you want to multiply? We put first the multiplication to be equals to what? 1, because we don't want you to put it to 0 at once. So we just make it 1, because anything times 0 will be 0 as well. So multiplication goes to 1 as well. So for add in args, that means as you're going through each of those particular, since it is multiplication, as you're going through each of those particular illustration, as you're going through that particular loop, as it's going, it has to multiply itself. So each of those particular what they call it, arbitrary variable that we have created in args, each of them, for example, here 2, 5, 4, and 3, as it is going, as it is looping, we also want to do what? We want to multiply. You can see the shorthand multiplication that we have done here. And by the time we do that, we set that particular multiplication that starts with 1. It multiplies each of the elements that we have looped. By the time we do that, we're going to return. You can see now that this is the function of the tuple itself. Unlike before, we could have just said return summation with only, but now we can put it in a tuple and say return summation, comma what? Multiplication. Nevertheless, we could have done summation in another way, but this was just the way I came up with it. We have different ways to make sure multiplication could have also been another way. So take note of that. You can always put in your own way as far as you understand it, no matter how long it is. It may be only just one line, but at least you understand what I've done. For arg in args, it means as we are going through each of the iteration, as it is going for this inside this for loop. So anytime we have, for us to get the multiplication, we want to multiply by what? The original value, which we have set to be 1. So 1 times this times as another loop is coming in, another number is coming in. For example, if it is 2, it's going to be 1 times 2. Another one comes in, then 2 times 5. Another one comes in, then 2 times 5, which then 10 times 4, which is this, and like that until we get what we want. So you can see here, return summation, comma multiplication, and we call it out. We call the name of the function out, and we put in the values that you want to, the arguments you want to put. So 2, 5, 4, 3. You can see here 2 plus 5 will give us 7. 7 plus 4 will give us 11. 11 plus 3 will give us 14. And the same thing with 120 for the multiplication. It gives us 10 times 40, 40 times 3, that's 120. At this particular point, I would like to, okay, let me just finish this up. So we could have just decided to, we can just get the result element from the tuple via tuple assignment. We can have used tuple assignments tuple assignment is very important at some point. I like bringing it up at some point. So you can unpack this as well. Instead of just doing this one and bring out the just 14 and 120, you could have just assigned it to another kind of like each of them should be unpacked by a variable. So summation there takes that of this particular function, any return or the first thing that is going to return in this function, which we have defined here, which is summation or multiplication. The first one is the summation. So we put it here, multiplication, we're going to put it here. So anything that it comes out here is going to be assigned to this print statement. We say, okay, print, we put the summation. I want to make it wonderful, look nice. So we do this, and you can see the outcome of it. You can see it comes out wonderful. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go, and if you have questions, please ask. Okay, let me check. Let me go to let me check whose hand was up first. Okay, Dr. Kwemi's hand was raised first. So, Dr. Kwemi, please ask your question.
All right, thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Can you let me see your screen?
Okay.
Yeah, please scroll up.
Okay.
Okay, what I just want to know is this multiplication. Why do we have to include this line multiplication equals to 1? Why not just go
Okay.
straight to for arts in arts multiplication equals to? Why do we have to first of all say multiplication equals to 1? What is the function of that line?
Okay. The function
That
of okay, if there was okay, I just put it said in a way that we'll be able to understand. So the function of this multiplication is equals to 1. Please mute yourself. Is simply because we want something to start with. We want something to start with. So if we did not put multiplication here, there will be no variable that we're going to call out that says, okay, what is this particular multiplication? If there was no multiplication is equals to 1 here, there will be no multiplication. If we try it out, it's going to give us a value. It said there will be no, there's no value or variable called what multiplication. So why did we set it to 1? Because it's just a normal thing. Because anything multiplied by 1 will give us that particular value. We could have also done for summation instead of putting like this for summation. You could have just done what they call it. Summation is equals to 0 because that one is summation.
summation
Nothing
equals
will,
to 0.
yes,
That
now
was the
say
next
now
question
use
I wanted to ask.
yes, you can have just used for arc in this, and now put summation
For
equals
summation plus equals to
plus equals, yes, exactly. So there are ways
add.
you could have, yes. So you understand why we did that now.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
I just needed to
Yeah,
be sure.
yeah, there are always different ways of making this thing work for us.
Yes, I needed to understand this method. That's why I had to ask
But at
that
least
question.
you understand it very well.
Yeah, I understand. I understand it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Mr. Cole, yes, you'll be a doctor someday as well. Okay, doctor.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Hey, can you hear me, Mr. Edwin? Good evening.
Yes, good evening to you, sir.
Okay, I want to ask, when unpacking, does it only work with functions that are supposed to return two outcomes?
Uh, you can return as many as you want. For example, you can have maybe you could have done another one maybe for division. I've done another one for division and put comma as the only time you like do your arguments here by your particular method you want to use and put comma division. Maybe you want to use it for that as well. I don't know if is that what you asked or there's something
Okay,
you want.
no,
Okay.
I understand. I was just thinking because with the normal, you said it's only with tuples that you can create a function that will return two outcomes. So I was just thinking of the normal function that returns just one
The,
if it would work.
the
If you
normal
unpack.
function returns, yes, the normal function only returns one, but by the time you just put in, the only thing we just for you to put in this bracket and call out the name of the variable in which you have already told the function to work on. Okay, so that's it.
Okay. Okay. So if I may understand you, once you put the asterisk args, it
Yeah,
you can bring as
pick
many
as
for you can
yes,
as many outputs
yes,
as you want.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, any other questions? Any other question? Okay, Miss. Okay, right. All right. Thank you. Mute yourself. Okay, let's go there. Let's go. Might not really spend much tonight. Not really feeling too that strong. So let's go to another example. So you define a function taking a list as parameter. So this particular one, we're going to take a list as parameter instead of the normal this thing that we normally use. It will return the mean, the max, and the mean of that's the average. So let's use statistics for mean. So we're going to import statistics itself. We are importing the model. So we are importing the module itself. We don't want to waste time. That's one of the advantages of Python. They have pre-installed. If I started teaching you with this, if, I bet you might not have gotten a lot of Python because I could have just decided to just go import all this and you will not know what is going on in the background. Just import it, use it, add it here, and we are good to go. So that one, but now this is when you know Python, you actually at least you are getting to understand more of the basics of it now. So you can just import statistics and there'll be a time we'll also import statistics and also import as you're importing inside the statistics. There are things you just want to bring out. You don't want to bring out the whole statistics module. So let's get there. We define a function and what is this particular a simple statistic that I want to use, and we are bringing in a list as parameters here. Instead of the normal single values that we used to bring in, we're bringing a list here. And we're going to use inside this function, we want to create a minimum value. And the minimum is equals to mean of that list. Is going to is this word, this particular one is a method that we want to get the minimum of that list. This other one is the maximum of that list. And this one also, you can see that I'm bringing the statistic itself. This is when we are calling out the statistic model. And we said uh, mean is equals to statistics dot mean. They can see now that some points you might ask me, why am I using mean here? Why is it that mean is a what they call it is a method here, but why am I using a key looking like a keyword? No, it is not a keyword at this particular time. Why is it so? Because if you can see the color of a keyword is quite different. That this one here is green in color. So the keyword here, this one is not it's not coming out from the statistics kind of model. If it was, we could have said statistics dot max of it, but this particular one, we're just putting it in a way that we could be descriptive enough. It doesn't affect our work as well. So mean is equals to statistics dot mean of that particular list. So that's what Mr. Uko was asking that time. We can see now we can return as many as you want, as many values as you want. So you can see minimum, maximum, and also mean. This one is very straightforward. So we return my list. So my list is equals to the list that we want to use is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very enough. So we decide to say, okay, we are going to the unpacking directly. We don't want to do all those things that we did here. For this one, we now call it out. We could have added some, could have just said this thing, could have called the function name and put in the list here. But we just want to do straight up as we have showed before now. So I did the unpacking straight up here, minimum, comma, maximum, comma, average. The average here is the mean that we reference here on this particular one. I could have also used mean here, but I just want to use average. It's the same thing. Equals to the simple stat. You call out the function name and put in the parameter in which you want to, which is my list, which is a list here, and you put it here. By the time you do that, you now say, okay, let me decide to make it. Let me decide to make it look wonderful. You print it out. You print it out. Put minimum, maximum, and average. You can see the answer here. Minimum is 1, maximum is 5, the average is 3 itself. So I don't know if there are any questions. If there are no questions, could have decided could have just say about zip could have decided to say things about zip at this particular point. So I not really that okay. Dr. Pemizan is also raised as well. So let's ask question. Please, if you have any question, this is where we'll just stop for tonight at some point. I'm really sorry, not really can hear that I'm really confused. Maybe I'll just try to get drugs or the stress. Maybe stress that is me. Okay, Dr. Pemi, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Please
Yes,
let
sir.
me see your screen.
Okay, sir.
Okay. you define this function, you started with a underscore list. But when you're trying to call it out,
Okay.
go down so that we can see the next.
Okay.
Now using my underscore list.
Okay. Okay. That's this. I could have this. Okay. I think your background is noisy. What I get, maybe what
Yeah.
I'm getting now. So what I would like, Dr. Kwame, your background is noisy. I don't know. What you're asking is that why
Yes.
are we changing the name? Why are we changing the name, right? Exactly, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, okay. Exactly what we are trying to say, that we could have used this one to be anything at all. We could have decided to make it as far. We just want to show that it is a parameter we want to use. There's a parameter I can have decided to put R at any point, and by the time I put in R, let me just try to. You can mute yourself, no problem. Just your background is noisy. So you could have used anything at all. You could have used anything at all here. But as far as we want to do is that what you are going to do, once you use R here, you have to use R here and R here and also R here, because that's the same thing that you're putting in here. Now, that is the parameter in which we are using, okay? But when we are calling out the function itself, so anything that comes inside the brackets of this function is going to be assumed to be R, or be assumed to be a list. Anything at all that comes inside, once you call out the function, is going to assume that anything that we do inside this space is what we wanted it to do right from the very beginning of the R that we did here. Let's say we use this place to be R. We just, all of them, we're going to use R because we started with R here. But when you're calling out the function itself, once you're calling out the function, you can decide to use anything you want, any name you want to use, but it's just going to tell you that naturally, when I was trying to do my function here, when I was doing this, my function here, I did what? I use R to what do you call it, to do our methods to work for us. So anything that comes inside this particular, when you call out the function, is going to say, okay, anything that you call in here is going to take the form of what? R. What did we say R should do? It should be the minimum of what R itself. The same thing that we did for arguments here. Let's see. The args itself, we can see here, by the time we call out the arguments, at the end of it is not, we did not say what they call it. When we call out the name of the function, the argument that we passed here was not, we did not put args here. It was not args that we put here. We put in what? The thing that is going to take what the what they call it, the function, the parameters in which is going to represent args that we have said that we should do what the method it should do. So this 1, 2, 5, 4, 3 is what is the args representing this parameter args itself. So we did not put args here. We put in the what we want, the values in which we want to make this particular function to start the process of the method that in which we define it to be. I don't know if you get it, Mr. Dr. Kwame.
Yes, I'll go over it later. I was trying to get away from my son, so I could barely focus.
Okay,
But I will look at
okay,
it later.
okay, okay. All right. So, if there are any, please ask your question. If there are any questions again, I think we just have to call it a night here. I'm sorry about that. Any questions? Please, any questions? Okay, Dr. Kwame, your hand is raised again. I don't know if it's the previous raising of hand or any other one. Okay, stop. Mr. Funso, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Fonobong, Mr. Medjong, any question? Please ask. I think Mr. Sunday joining late. I don't know if he understood what we have done so far. Okay. Okay. Thank you guys for joining into tonight's session. I'm really sorry for calling it quite early. I just had to, maybe it's stress that is doing me. I'll just have to relax a little. And thank you for joining in. And please, you still have the material. You can always go through it. It's commented at any point you do not understand. Even though you want to, maybe you are finished for the course, you are finished the class, the what they call it. You go through the file I've sent. By the time you go through the file, you don't understand anything. Even though we have not taught it before, you can always reach out to me and ask. I'm always there to explain if I have the opportunity to like to be online at that time. So I don't know, maybe the workload has been really high when it comes. I don't know if it was because of the salary or what people came up with different things to do. So, um, okay, so we'll just stop there for today. If you have any questions, please ask. And anytime we have a class, please let's just try and always be available. Let's try. Anyhow, I'm always trying to squeeze out my time. We must finish it up and just go through a whole lot of things. Go through your scheme of work that I sent at the beginning of the lecture, the classes. Go to check anyone that we have not done. Please tell me and tell God we have not done this so because you are following that course outline from the beginning to the very end of it. So let's see how we can make sure that you understand the concept of all this. Thank you very much and have a fantastic evening.